Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Hello all. Welcome to episode 47 of Fire Code Tech. In this episode, we're speaking with Jake Zlomie. Yes, Jake is back on the podcast talking about his new role with the Central Valley Fire District in Belgrade, Montana. In this episode, we talk about all Jake's favorite subjects, including fire investigation, public credentialing and certifications, and technology and what he sees as how to optimize your workflow. Jake drops some incredible tips like how to get involved with your fire department if you are looking to get back or get more ingrained with fire and life safety at a community level. Jake also breaks down the difference between his current role and his previous role as the AHJ for Montana State University. As a bonus, Jake gives us some insight to his time as a committee member on NFPA 72. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and follow us on social media. Do me a big favor and go give us a 5-star review wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. It helps out with the algorithm. Let's get into the show. Well, Jake, thanks for coming on the show. Welcome back to Fire Code Tech.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back. It's kind of hard to believe all the progress that you guys, you've been busy. Definitely been busy over the last couple episodes.
Yeah, it's been fun being on the podcast, and I think it's been. God, I don't remember exactly the number of your first episode, but I think it was maybe in the teens. So it's been over a year probably since we did our first podcast episode. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, professionally and just in the podcast space. So yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, I guess it's real kind of informal today, but I know that we were talking about it a little bit off air, but I know that you recently had a transition from your role at the University of Bozeman, or I don't what's the specific name of the college, to a different role.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I was working over at Montana State University here in Bozeman as the campus fire marshal over there, and kind of back in August. Transitioned over as kind of to be the fire and life safety specialist for the Central Valley Fire District here in Belgrade, which is it's kind of right next to Bozeman, right next to the college. Um, and in November, I ended up getting kind of appointed to serve as interim fire marshal for the fire district. So it's certainly been a journey, and definitely learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, it's been incredible for me to hear a little bit about how much you've been learning in this new role and what it means for you. What kind of piqued your interest about this career shift when you were looking at making a change?
Yeah. So overall, I kind of when I overall I grew up within the fire department, kind of watching. My dad was on the fire department, my uncle, my grandpa, everyone was kind of involved with the fire department. So I always kind of had a fondness of what the fire department did in a community. And one thing that when my wife was originally from Montana, which is what kind of moved us out here to begin with. But that was kind of I was working for a fire department in Illinois prior to moving out here. So I was kind of hoping to get back into the fire service one day, and just kind of we kind of had with the growth of the area overall, and kind of last summer seemed to be kind of there was a couple fire departments in the area hiring, and I was kind of fortunate to get hired here at Central Valley, and I live within the fire district as well. So it was kind of nice. It wasn't I didn't have to take a new job and then move halfway across the country or even down the street. It's actually a lot, it's a 2-minute drive to get to work.
Wow,
Um,
that's nice.
so that's super, super nice. It makes, it's, not to, it was like 20 minutes to get to the university. I can be at work and in my office in about 5 minutes now. So it's definitely nice from a commute standpoint. I don't get to listen to podcasts as much in the car, but I try to make up for it when I can.
Yeah, that's cool. So you were speaking with me a little bit about it before, but like, what's kind of the difference between you were explaining the difference between being a part of a fire department for like a specific city, or and then but you're working for a district now, which is a bit of a larger thing. Yeah, would you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so overall, it seems like most states have it set up in kind of a similar way, but in Montana specifically, we have municipalities, and by state statute, once a town hits a certain threshold, they're required to provide a fire department. And then you also have like a fire district or a fire service area. And those are basically kind of a group of more or less a group of citizens that pool together to say, hey, we want to provide for our own fire protection, and it kind of grows. So it's a kind of a political subdivision, independent of a municipality, somewhere between a municipality and a county, so to speak. But our fire district's fairly large. We're about 200 square miles overall, and we have about 38,000 citizens that reside within our fire district. We have some subset communities that we serve in the area, but within our fire district, we have the city of Belgrade, which is actually where our main fire station one is actually located in Belgrade here. But that city just reached 10,000 folks here at the last census. So they're kind of the only municipality that we work with, and the rest of it's kind of either an unincorporated county, properties that are unincorporated, or kind of, or there's some parts where it's pretty rural and pretty remote. So we cover a pretty diverse landscape overall, and it brings a lot of opportunity with it, but kind of it also has quite a bit of challenges overall too. Specific, really from the operation standpoint, it can be pretty challenging.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to hear some more about kind of how you've begun to kind of wrap your arms around some of those challenges. And I guess maybe before that, we could speak about like in the work that you're doing now, compared to Montana State University, like how you would describe those two roles and like what how they're different from each other. I think that if people want to like get a feel for what you were doing previously, the last episode is a great like overall episode on your career and what you're doing at the university. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear about how your role now, like in the actual meat of the work that you're doing, differs.
Yeah, so I think one of the, I guess probably the major difference overall is just probably one in the I guess the developed landscape of the area that we're working in. And for the university, we had the kind of the core campus, and everything had fire hydrants. It was easy. Getting water to put in a sprinkler system wasn't a challenge. For the most part, it was pretty easy, pretty advanced, from the alarm standpoint. And it was also, a lot of, kind of the more of the maintaining those fire and life safety assets that we had to, how do we advise management on, this is a building that's 100 years old. How do we make sure that that maintains its fire and life safety features? And um, it's kind of, you're getting into some like more things kind of really at a technical level, where right now, I guess my position would be, we're kind of at a higher level overall, with what we're looking at. And, we're still using the same fire code, still using we're still on the same, same codes and standards overall, but a majority of our fire district doesn't even have, we don't have a water supply. So it's up to kind of our operations folks to bring water. We have a lot of dry hydrants and fill sites across our fire district that can serve as a source of fire protection water supply. If we did have a fire event, we have the subdivision regulations from the county are pretty good, where we get some pretty good options for what the developer can do, whether they bring in water supply and hydrants, or they can actually sprinkle the houses. So that was in our last calendar year, the number one permit that our office actually kind of issued was for a residential sprinkler system, which was kind of a really pretty cool thing, given our kind of the environment of, how residential sprinklers can be a pretty hot topic, for in most communities that you work in.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't have guessed it. So, like, what does that provision kind of look like? Because it seems like in most of the U.S., that's like something that's avoided. Like, what is that? Is it what's kind of the thresholds for those residential sprinkler systems?
yeah, so overall, we can kind of have, if you were to build a subdivision and it had a municipal hydrant system, um, where you could, very easily pull 1,000 gallons per minute for at least 20 pounds or higher for 2 hours. If you could do that, that's pretty much the gold standard. And we don't see sprinklers being installed in those properties. Um, where it gets where we do see sprinklers starting to get installed is when we have kind of a more rural subdivision. The developer has some options between, they could either use like storage tanks, they could build a fire pond, um, and they could, whether it's there's kind of some different options between, you could put in just a straight dry hydrant where it's just up to the fire apparatus to pull water through it. You could put in a fire hydrant with a pump, um, for that to kind of provide you that minimum, that fire flow more or less, um, to help that. Or you may, there's a couple where you see a combination where they may run some fire hydrants, but those fire hydrants can't supply 1,000 gallons per minute. So you may have a 500 gallon per minute hydrant plus sprinklers.
Mm.
So overall, our subdivision regulations are it's kind of interesting, where it's basically kind of a volume of water, a distance to a fire hydrant overall, um, and then if you install sprinklers, it definitely allows some flexibility where, the developer doesn't have to put as much infrastructure in, um, to the development overall, and then that the cost to sprinkle it is then basically just included in the price of the house.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I think that that makes a lot of sense in my head theoretically that, it's kind of a risk-based approach for depending on the kind of water supply and like what's available in the community. So that's cool to hear about. I've never heard about that sort of approach on a residential standpoint. So that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I just I it's been good hearing about your new role and kind of some of the new challenges. Yeah, I guess I guess that makes sense. So it was more technical details at the university, and it seems like it seems like you're a bit of a jack of all trades at your new position, as you're illustrating to me off air. But yeah, tell the listeners a little bit about like some of the activities that you've been getting involved with, as far as like the inspections side of things and the interim fire marshal position. I feel like it was all very fascinating when you're describing to me like the breadth of what your role entails now.
Yeah, so overall, from I guess it's from a size standpoint, where our our fire department here is about we have about 50 or so employees, with probably 35 or so of those being career members, and then the rest of them are volunteers. So it's kind of unique. That's a unique aspect in itself, to be working in a combination department where you have a kind of an initial career response and volunteers that are our volunteers are really dedicated to what they do and are they're pulling shifts just like and they're from the average observer, they're it's no different, they're but on the back end of it, you kind of know it's like, wow, hey, they're here for a whole 24 hours and they're not even getting paid for it. So it's super cool from a commitment standpoint, and what they're doing and how they're helping the community. But with that, we're kind of we have what the work that we do is primarily to support them so that they're successful, when they're called upon for an operation, whether it's fire, EMS. We do everything here, and we're one of the few departments in the area that actually has a fire department based ambulance. Uh, so some of the other departments in the area will contract that out, and our responders are actually the ones who are, we're maintaining the ambulance, they're transporting them to the hospital. So that's something that's kind of unique about our organization too. But um, with that, we're kind of, we're like most government agencies and most fire departments, we're limited on our resources. So we're kind of, everyone's doing, a lot of work, across a wide variety of roles. So, basically as kind of interim fire marshal, I'm kind of responsible for kind of I guess our fire code, and administration of the fire code overall. And But in addition to that, I also am our IT administrator here, which is that's been a definitely an interesting learning process to figure out how we maintain. I've been always been big with computers overall, but to think, okay, how do we make our computers so that they aren't a burden to our responders and that it's not a burden for them to fill out a report or do the work that they need to do on it, but also to say, look at the higher level to say, how do we build a network and the IT infrastructure that we really need as a government entity, and that's resilient and is a piece of critical infrastructure for us. Um, so that's been interesting. On top of that, with our ambulance and our ambulance transport that we do, we do bill for those. So we have a medical billing company that we pair with, that does that. So I'm kind of our contact for that, which it doesn't add a whole lot, but it's kind of, it's something that takes some time every week to stay on top of those and kind of maintain contact with them. And then kind of one of the ones that I've been having a little bit of fun with is, I've also been filling in as our public information officer, as well as kind of managing our social media. So it's been interesting from that aspect of it to see how things, how do we communicate the information and communicate the story that we have here? Because That's, a lot of it, we see interesting stories every day, and how do we communicate those out? And it's been interesting to watch and see on, across our social media channels, what stories that we share, how they grow, and which ones will grow quickly, which ones there'll be posts and ones that I share that I think, oh, this is a really good post, it's really solid info, and it just doesn't gain traction. And then there's other ones where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll share this, you know it's just some, information, and it'll just take off. So it's kind
Yeah.
of interesting to learn about our community, and what and how we can connect with them, because in the end of it, that's really what we're just trying to do, is to connect with the community and get that information out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I totally get what you mean about how you think some posts are going to go off like a rocket and then they have a wet flop on the floor and you're like, "Well, that didn't turn out how I thought it would." And then some stuff you're like, "Okay, another post." And then it just goes off and you're just like, wow, people really liked whatever that was. I can't tell if it's the graphic or the content or something about that was good, resonated people, or when I posted it. Uh, so that's funny to hear you have some of the same struggles about like figuring out how to develop that narrative. But I feel like it's kind of interesting that fire departments. There's a lot of really good like kind of fire department social accounts out there. So I guess you have some examples of how people, what kind of content and post it people have around that subject. So that's cool that you're getting, man, you're really covering a lot of ground there. But yeah, it makes sense, and I appreciate you adding some extra exposition for, the format of your department, and people who are volunteers and people who are donating their time, and the really beautiful thing for the community that is, and how you prefaced your large volume of workload, and that everybody is um, doing their best to wear a lot of hats and produce for the greater good of the community. So that's cool to hear about.
Yeah, and it's been one of those things too, like, you pick up any, any fire service magazine, that it's been a challenge for, the volunteer fire service organizations, just to, retain, attract volunteers, retain volunteers. And a lot of it, it's kind of a bit of, how we're seeing work shift, even, where, so people aren't, you're not really able to leave work to go jump on a fire truck. And so it's kind of been interesting to see, from that aspect. And we're no exception to that. We're still seeing, challenges with, getting volunteers and keeping volunteers. Having the university here definitely helps us, because we'll get students, who are, they're studying, a field, but are interested in the fire service, and they'll kind of, volunteer, and kind of learn about that aspect of it. But it's certainly interesting, and really, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have overall, is just the growth. And we're not terribly busy. Last year we ran 2,300 calls. It was kind of the highest year we've had to date, but that was up 10% from the year before, and it was 10% the year before that. And um, and really, like, one out of every three calls occurs while there's another call in progress. So um, we can definitely run out of resources really quick. And it's, that's kind of, to me, it's part of it, is there's a lot from an operations standpoint, that our operations side is, kind of trying to figure out, how do we be more efficient from that standpoint, and keep everyone safe. But then on the prevention, and on the overall community risk side of it, is to say, how can, that creates a lot of opportunity for us to get out and about in the community, and see what we can do to kind of get ahead of those calls, so we don't have to, so we can minimize that risk. And that's something that we can do, relatively easily. Just finding the data and then coming up with those strategies.
Yeah, so as somebody who is an advocate for the industry and an advocate for fire and life safety, how would you recommend that people get involved if they would like to get involved in the fire service? Because uh, I hear you say that it's hard to get people who are volunteers and just like to become involved, but I've also heard from you and other professionals that opportunities with municipalities can sometimes be sparing because of funding and the kind of different qualifications that you have to get to be qualified. So I guess yeah, advice for people on how they can get involved. Yeah, I would appreciate hearing about that from you.
Yeah, I think probably your best bet for it is to just swing by your local fire station, if you have any sort of interest in it, and kind of see, hey, what are your guys' needs, and what opportunities do you have? There's some departments that are going to be all career based, and unless and that's it works for them, but it's kind of hard to see, hey, I want to help out, I'm here, I'm willing. Um, but there's other departments that'll be, hey, they can plug you right in and, get you signed up for training on the next week, and kind of get you started. So, um, we try to do, at least like, we try to do kind of a volunteer academy here where, we kind of get folks signed up, and it makes it, one, it's kind of more efficient for us to say, hey, we can bring on, if we bring on 2 groups a year, it's a bigger group. We can get them through training together. Um, but I think part of it too is just say, hey, there's it it we from a volunteer standpoint, it's not always about even riding, getting on the fire truck, so to speak. We there's uh, a, a lot of stuff that the fire department can get involved with, um, that is kind of outside the box. To say, hey, even like social media and marketing, like if you're in that arena and you know how to do it, and you're going to have expertise that your fire department could only wish to have, and say, hey, here's some, I'd like to volunteer my time. I do this during my 9 to 5, but I'm happy to help you guys out. Even from a a sprinkler designer or code, really heavy code involvement, just to say, hey, to kind of stop down, so, hey, introduce yourself, and I'm glad to help out however I can, whether it's just kind of you know grabbing lunch here and there and talking about code issues and helping to kind of educate and share the knowledge that you have. That's super helpful in itself too. It's so it doesn't always have to be riding the fire truck, uh, but most of the time, it's kind of that's kind of where the need is. So that's what the fire department will more or less look for. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity to get involved, and I would just, yeah, stop by your local fire station, and see what they can see what help they need.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, Jake. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's even as somebody who's more on the code and the design side of things, I think that I need to schedule some time to go speak with some local fire departments. There are, more than a couple within easy driving range of where I work, and I think that would be, a meaningful way for me to be able to, donate time or get involved, even if it's not riding the truck. So I appreciate that your coverage on that topic.
Yeah, and it's even, if you're involved, like with a local SFPE chapter, or, in Illinois, we had a Fire Inspectors Association, and it was kind of a good mix. You'd get the, municipal fire uh, folks there, and you'd get people who would work in the design side and people who'd work on the service side. And it was kind of gave them that forum where you could kind of network and learn from one another. um, but even, I know it seems like from the design side, there it seems like the company reps that come through, whether it's, reliable or whoever come, it's a sales pitch for you guys. But there's a lot that they can learn, about, the products, and just even to say, hey, here, who local fire inspector I'm going to have reliable out here. They're talking about these sprinkler heads, or Tyco's going to come out here and show me their new dry valves, whatever it is. That's kind of valuable in itself too, to see kind of, to help everyone come up, see the technology as it comes. And it's that's kind of one thing that on the this side of things, it's easy to it's easier to stay up on top of the code updates than it is on the probably on the technology updates, because that's something that just doesn't come along all that often here.
Yeah, I understand. It is hard to keep appraised of the what's trending in technology because uh, things move so fast, and you have to make time to learn about the different valving and fire alarm systems. So even as somebody who is pretty embroiled in systems design, it's hard to keep appraised of everything that's going on. So yeah, I appreciate that. Even at that SFPE level, that it would be good information for getting involved with your community kind of thing. But on the SFPE note, what other kind of professional societies are you involved in in your time as a professional?
Yeah, so really right now, I'm pretty involved, or I maintain involvement. Kind of, I guess the three core ones that I'm involved with right now are the International Code Council, so ICC, um, NFPA for sure. And then another one that I've been kind of newer to is the IAAI, which is just that International Association of Arson Investigators. Um, so right now I'm pretty much, involvement wise, I'm pretty much just a member. Once, when I was at the university, I was able to get, I was served on the technical committee for NFPA 72, and chapter 24 for a little bit. And then but basically once to maintain those different, kind of the users or the committee makeup. If when you change positions, you kind of have to reapply to those committees, and I haven't done that yet. Um, so right now, kind of just maintaining membership in all of those, and trying to take listen in where I can. ICC they have kind of their various membership councils, and those are always, I want to say those are like a monthly meeting or every other month. So they're fairly active, and you can kind of go see. There's the Fire Service Membership Council, is one that I try to stay up with to see what's going on in that world of it. Um, and then the other one that ICC has that's pretty good is they have an emerging leader membership council. So it's for individuals who are kind of relatively, I think they target like less than 10 years into the kind of a code type role. Uh, and that's been pretty good too, just to kind of get with some peers across, because, that's one of the things is like, here I'm just kind of a one man shop currently, but there's a lot of that where, you may be a building inspector and you're like the only building inspector for a town doing everything. So it's kind of interesting to network with those folks too, and learn from them. And both of those have been pretty good. So
Man, I didn't know that you were on the NFPA 72 committee when you were at Montana State University. That's pretty interesting. I feel like those 72 committees are pretty coveted, or at least it seems like the big three, like 1372 and maybe like 101 or something. It seems like it's really hard to get a seat on those. But yeah, that's cool. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was it was kind of interesting. NFPA's always got on their website, they're always looking for uh committee members, and it's interesting to see. I mean, it really makes you see the depth of their how deep their codes and standards really go, because you're just looking through that and like, wow, I had no idea that that was a standard. And it's in there. But the other interesting thing, particularly for those who are working as an AHJ, is that NFPA has a committee seeking enforcers program, and that's basically you're looking for those individuals who function as an AHJ. And so that's how I kind of got involved with the 72 committee, and that was it happened kind of right at when COVID kind of first started. That's kind of when I applied, and I didn't have a very long stint on it. It was probably a year, and it was in kind of mid draft, so it was still super interesting to learn the process, and it was helpful too that the committee meetings were all on Teams, so because that's kind of really one of the biggest challenges if you were to do that would be the travel expenses and stuff. Um, but a lot of that has shifted with the pandemic, so it's made it super accessible. So um, definitely, yeah, if you're interested at all into the committees, and you work as an AHJ on the side of it, check out those committee seeking enforcers, because there's always opportunity out there, and it's a good opportunity to learn.
yeah, that's cool. I think that even though, set a short stint on it, but that's still cool to have that experience and to get to learn a little bit about the process. Um, so that's neat. I've always wanted to volunteer, but yeah, just like it takes time to get involved and to put your application in, and I've never made it over that very small hurdle. So it's cool to hear about your experience with that. So I wanted to speak with you about so you spoke about your involvement in ICC and a couple of these rather large codes and standards entities. But I know that you have a real interest in getting professional credentials. Yeah, I guess if you could talk about a couple of the professional credentials maybe you got in the last year or so.
Yeah, so I, I got a lot on my list that I want to get. It seems like I'm always, kind of diving through and hey, I should look at that, and it's kind of I don't know if I like to take the tests or what. It's kind of a fun rabbit trail to kind of learn through and be challenged by. But I guess really in the last year has been somewhat slow, I guess, in terms of that. One of the ones that was kind of interesting, um, late last, probably April or May, I was able to get certification for in NICET level 1 and 2 in fire alarm systems, and that was kind of uh, that was cool. I never really had anticipated getting going, towards like NICET certification, uh, but that was one that was for it supported kind of what we were doing at the university, and it was one of those things where I'm like, from as an AHJ, I was always kind of looking to see, looking to, I was looking for that NICET certification as I was reviewing plans and, looking at inspection reports and stuff. And so that was kind of, it really made me kind of appreciate the process, and, it gave me a better understanding too of, what individuals have to go through just to, get and maintain those certifications. So that was definitely good. I'm currently kind of working on, I've been, since I've kind of got over here, for the fire department, I've been kind of working, I've done a couple, classes from, fire service focused, overall, and some incident command, uh, incident command system classes that I've done, and which has been those have been definitely super interesting, and definitely kind of makes you look at prevention in a unique standpoint. Um, where you're kind of looking at, here's this is the incident before you, and you're kind of trying to, think in your head at the same time, well, here's the safeguards that the building may or may not have, or it should have. Um, so that's been interesting. And one of the big, roles that I have kind of assigned to me now that I don't have a ton of experience with, is on the fire investigation side. So that's kind of been I've been kind of diving after it here. CFItrainer.net is a great website where you can kind of learn all sorts of, they have all sorts of videos and programs towards fire investigation, and they're all free. So that's been super helpful, and helping me to kind of build up some of that knowledge. And it's been, it's kind of, challenging to find those classes, particularly in Montana. We don't really have like a state curriculum for it. So we kind of have to look for a national organization, or the National Fire Academy that would be offering some classes on it. So the end of this month here, at the end of February, I'm going to be traveling to Wisconsin for a 40-hour fire investigation class. And then with that, trying to work on some certifications from IAAI. Right now I've been working on paperwork for their fire investigation technician program. That's kind of their entry level certificate. And then they have a CFI credential, which is their certified fire investigator. So those have been the ones that I'm really kind of working towards now. And then, there's always some ICC stuff in there. I'm going to try to work on some just more of the building code, general building code certifications, and work towards that, as I have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you talk about like the fire investigations. I always love getting some insight from people when I get a chance to talk to people who are involved with fire investigations, because it seems so um, foreign to what I'm involved with every day on a systems perspective, even though that's everything that kind of my industry is based on. We just had a really big fire within like visual from my office building this last week. It was like a 5-story apartment building, and it was a month away from being done with construction, and they had already started leasing um, some of the apartments out, and like the people were going to occupy the building in about a month. And it's a wood construction building and caught on fire, I guess. Ostensibly, reports so far say from electrical issues, and pretty much burned to the ground, or like unrecoverable. They're gonna have to take a bulldozer to it. So yeah, that's fascinating. I'd love to hear more about your experience with fire investigations.
Yeah, no, and that's, and it seems like those kind of fires you know, aren't far and few between. It seems like those, we had one, and not, right when we moved here in Bozeman, they had one, but very similar. It was like a 4-story wood frame, type 5 wood frame apartment complex. Towards the end of completion, like they had sprinkler pipe hung, and it was there. System wasn't active, and same thing, kind of burned to the ground. Um, and it's definitely interesting, how we see um, it's one thing to have, to see the loss from an existing building, but it's, also unique to see what the loss is from a building under construction like that, and how the ripple effects can really impact the community. Um, Overall, from a fire investigation standpoint, my experience has been, it's been pretty limited. I've had a couple of classes, through the fire academy and through, um, and through kind of various sources. While I was at OSU, we had a couple of classes on fire investigation. Um, so far I guess my ex- background on it to date has largely been to more or less kind of identify the need for fire investigation, um, to identify those incidents as well as to identify kind of, here's what, as a responder, here's, the steps that you can take to preserve the scene and preserve evidence so that the investigator, and the investigation team can really do the, have the best tools and path to success that they have. So that's kind of been most of the investigation standpoint. Since kind of getting involved, since getting transitioning to the fire department here, we have had. We've had several fires so far, so it's been helpful to we've had we have a couple of we don't have as many as we should, but a couple of folks here that have investigation experience, and that have we fortunately have been smaller fires that are we can kind of go through, walk through, and handle it at our level. We had a larger fire last last week, and and for that we called an investigator from our state fire marshal's office who came down. So it was just super helpful just to even kind of to be there and to do kind of follow him along, see what kind of things he's looking, what the investigator's looking at, and take I can take pictures. I could point a camera, tell me where you want to take a picture of. So kind of to help out where I can while kind of learning the process overall. So that's what kind of the end of this month I'm hoping to have a little bit uh, firmer foundation for investigation overall, to kind of build out our program here some more. And I've been I applied. I applied in probably December, I guess, to the National Fire Academy. They have a 10-day fire investigation course, that I had heard nothing but, it's been like the best training out there is what I've heard from multiple different sources. And I'm trying to kind of get into that class. I wasn't able to get in this application period. So now I'm going to kind of try to keep reaching out to get into that class, but trying to keep my eyes out for training opportunities, um, both online and regionally, and then try to see how we can kind of build the program before we have to, before our next investigation begins is kind of the hope. But
Yeah, that's cool to hear about that you're getting the opportunity to like follow a more seasoned investigator around and like kind of see the process. I think that's awesome. And I got to say, I am impressed and inspired by your commitment to keep learning and keep professionally developing. I think that's really admirable and something that I want to. I've had periods in my career where I've been really good about it, but I need to get focused again on uh, grabbing some more certs. So um, it's always love hearing people's stories. To me, that's really something that gives me motivation is to hear about people doing good stuff. So I'm excited to hear about you. Even with all the things that you have going right now at your current role, you are still working on developing as a professional and seeking knowledge where you are looking to develop. So that's cool. I really enjoyed hearing about that.
yeah, and that's and I think that's one of the things that was really I've always kind of maintained an eye out there for here's a webinar there and a webinar there, some of those easier ones, but that was kind of one of the things too that was helpful about, and super great at the university was, being a learning institution, but professional development was always a pretty high priority. Um, so it was good, and had a lot of opportunity there to kind of get involved and keep growing. And uh, and everyone, our administration here has been supportive of that growth and continuing to grow. And it's really interesting too, because in the state of Montana there's a kind of have two main code organizations, one being the state fire marshal's office, and then one is being the building codes bureau through the state's labor and industry department. But they actually have, there's an actual a state law that requires the building code bureau to, it's like 1% of all permit fees goes towards education for the state. Um, so what it actually does is it they host a building codes conference, and it's typically it's every spring historically, and they'll bring in, and it's like a 3 to 4, I think it's like 4 day. Most of them have been 4 days of just like ICC instruction and peer code instruction. It's all ICC instructors, and um, I can't think of the plumbing, whoever the plumbing and mechanical people are, but
Oh yeah,
they,
ASE.
yeah, yeah. So they bring them out there too, so you can do, really you can have, the fire guys are there, the plumbing inspectors are there, the mechanical inspectors, everyone's there, and they're getting all, their CEUs for the state. And it's, and it when I first, the first one that I was able to attend, the registration fee was $100, which I'm like, well, that's the best deal. And for an ICC class, that, and for
Yeah.
4 days, that
Wow.
I can't beat that. And it's actually to the point now where there's been so much growth and so much development in Montana, that the state is actually trying to, that they can only keep so much in their reserves, spending wise, for that it's actually, the last 2 years it's been free, so zero cost to get ICC training.
Wow. That's awesome.
And yeah, so it's been, so that's a super, that's an awesome opportunity for us here, that, most people don't, aren't fortunate to have. And they kind of were talking about even starting to do something in the fall too. So, um, so that's definitely super beneficial here to have the support and the resources from the state to be able to do some of that. And it definitely makes it easy to kind of dive into, if you're interested in an IRC class or an IBC class, and maybe you don't want to pay them, it's like, I'm not sure, it's kind of a good avenue that you can kind of explore the different trades and different disciplines too.
Yeah, I'm glad that there are some good resources out there for people who are in enforcement. It sounds like I know that training can be sometimes one of those things that is really attractive, but can be cost prohibitive. I know from taking courses for our professional certification that they can get so expensive so fast. So that's awesome that you're getting some really stellar opportunities. I mean, probably the training stuff that ICC puts on is probably world class as far as what you're going to deal with from a code perspective for in the States. So that's awesome. But I wanted to kind of getting close to the end of the interview, and I wanted to speak with you. I can. I always like hearing from you about. You're kind of always somebody who is proactive with technology and kind of keeping up to date. So I wanted to ask you, like, what kind of like tools or websites or kind of things, technology things, are you using to stay competitive or just like what help your workflow?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of those things that it's like, well, I there's a lot of tools out there that I have no idea probably even exist. But one of the things that has been, where I'm fairly fortunate to be in the position of is that I'm pretty much one man, it's just me. I'm a one man shop kind of currently, especially from an inspection standpoint. So that has one created kind of some challenges in the overall kind of timing of the workflow, timing of my workflows and stuff. But it's also created there's been a lot of opportunity overall too, where it's like, okay, well, we're not, our permit load is not really enough probably to justify one of the more enterprise, one of the bigger inspection software platforms that are out there. Like there's like a couple different major vendors out there that sell them to cities and jurisdictions all over. But we're really probably not quite that big where it would be cost effective to do that. So I've kind of been able to create some of those tools on my own. Um, so one of the major tools that one of the big tools that I've kind of implemented here in the last month is just from smartsheet.com. And so I have a Smartsheet account, and it's basically like Excel on steroids. But you can kind of go through and you can create forms. So that's what I've started to do for permit applications is I have a Smartsheet form. So I can send that link to contractors and service providers. They can go through and it gets me the information that I need, and they can attach the documents right to it. So it kind of stores everything for me. But it's also nice because since I am kind of that one person shop, it's basically, from permit fees to, um, you know, getting sending the check to our office manager to get it deposited into our account. It's like, it's an all in, like literally doing it all. So it's super helpful to be able to go through and to track. Okay, here's the permit fees for this. Here's what we collected for it. Here's our here's the just the tracking information for the check or whatever, so that we know at the end, come the end of the year, we have it all in one place. So that's been super helpful. Another one that I've spent um, a lot of time kind of back and forth with scheduling. We'll play a pretty good game of phone tag here with, someone calls for an inspection, I'll call them back. I leave the office and they're, and out on an inspection and miss a call from them, and it goes back and forth, or, hey, what's your availability? And it kind of just, that was something that could kind of get me bogged down, that really didn't need to. So I started to use Calendly. It's like just Calend and then with an ly at the end of it. So you can actually just go to calendly.com/cvfd fire marshal, and you can book any sort of inspection with me. So that's what I end up doing with our, we do some regulatory inspections here, between daycare and cannabis, alcohol, those kind of places. So it's super helpful. If I'm out and about and I miss a call from a cannabis operator, I can go through, text them the link, and they can have an inspection scheduled for their facility. As soon as I'm able, and it syncs with my calendar and all that. So that's been super cool. It also gives me some cool tools that I can go through and do, like little reminders. So I can have it set up to say, hey, I'm going to do a hydro on a sprinkler system, and I can set it up for, whoever puts, what number they put in there will get a text message, 3 hours before to say, hey, Jake will be here for a hydro. Here's what you need to do. Or for the remote, a lot of it, having the kind of with COVID and the shift to from the pandemic, it's been super helpful to to be able to do some remote consultations with different designers and engineers that they can also go on there, book me, and it'll just automatically give them a Teams invite. So it's basically makes it super easy. I sent a link on Friday to a sprinkler designer, and they were able to book me for Monday to talk about a project that they have. So those things have been super helpful. Um, I'd like to, we kind of have, within the fire department, every fire department has a records management system, and that's kind of the core principle. The core piece that software is going to do is going to that's what our crews are going to use to report all the calls that they respond to. So that's really the primary function of that. We currently use a records management system that is kind of it's challenging on a couple different fronts. But what it also does is, there's an occupancy module for it that we can do inspections on and do, an electronic inspection that way. So within probably the next couple of months here, we're going to be switching records management systems. So that's going to be kind of another opportunity to kind of clean up our inspection checklists and make sure we can get a clean and clear inspection process figured out, as well as pre-incident planning for our crews. So I'm definitely excited for that. And then, I think, I'm always kind of looking to see what I can do to manage the workload and track the calls and those odds and ends, just to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can and the most efficient job, instead of having to kind of reinvent the wheel the entire time. And that's been one of the interesting learnings, to kind of step into a new role and to see, say, how can I make what I'm working on the most transparent for the next guy. And so that's been definitely a lot of learnings along the way, but it's been fun.
Man, that was so many good tips there. I love Calendly. I'm definitely going to check out Smart Sheets, and it's cool to hear what you're doing to try to refine the process. Man, Jake, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing all this great information about your career and good resources for others. And yes, big, big, big thank you for coming on another Fire Code Tech episode.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Definitely appreciate it. And if you or anyone else come up to Montana, there's only a few of us up here, so feel free to stop in.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.